Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Celtic Way morning briefing. It is Tuesday, the 11th of November. My name is Ryan McGinley. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Tony. Tony, how you doing? How are things with you?
I'm very well, Ryan. Yourself, all good?
Things are good, things are good. Yeah, there's been a lot going on in the past sort of 24, 48 hours, as we would expect. Of course, Celtic got back to winning ways with a 4-0 win over Kilmarnock at home against Kilmarnock. Plenty of goal scorers in that game. Daizen Maeda, Kieran Tierney, Arne Engels, and the opener from Johnny Kenny. Just before we get into talking about the managerial hunt and the fact that that's been ramped up ever so slightly, Tony, what did you make of that game on Sunday? Did you feel that Celtic got back to some sort of good form, or what did you make of it? Because I know that you were there in person.
Yeah, I was there with my father as a punter, Ryan, for strangely enough, it did feel strange. Yeah, I think they did the job, didn't they? If it's possible to see you kind of laboured to a 4-0 win, I think that was kind of my overarching emotion from that. But what I will say is I still feel there's a lot of improvement in the team. The goals that they scored were good goals. Even Arma Engels took a decent penalty as well. So, yeah, I still think there's lots of room for improvement. But, yeah, Martin O'Neill's instilled a bit of fire and a bit of spirit in them. There's certainly fire in the belly. And at 1-0, it was still kind of, I wouldn't say it was hanging in the balance, but, you're still susceptible to anything happening. But I didn't think Kilmarnock offered much by the way of going forward. So I always felt that if Celtic got the second goal, that would kill it, and that's what happened when Kearney drilled that one home, expertly taken goal. I felt right, fine. I did turn to my dad at that point and say 5. I put 5 digits up, and he was saying that was very optimistic. So I was wrong by a goal, but hey, I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get started and talk about the managerial hunt, I'd like to say I'll give a massive shout out to our sponsors at Simply Furniture. They are located in Hillington, Glasgow, and they're an independent brand dedicated to bringing luxury and contemporary style into homes across the UK. With over a decade of experience in furniture retail, they meticulously source only the finest pieces, curated for quality, comfort, and timeless design. From elegant sofas to statement dining sets, their hand-picked collections offer exceptional value without ever compromising on style. Their dedicated team ensures that your furniture is delivered with care right to your doorstep. And if you want to see the beauty up close, you can visit their stunning showroom. And if you mention the Celtic Way, you'll get a special in-store discount. All of their links are in the description, and we thank them for sponsoring this video and all the videos that we do. Now, Tony, there was a bit of news last night that broke later on in the evening. In fact, it broke in the afternoon from one source, and then it was backed up by another source. This is two sources reporting this news and it was a name that has been linked to the club in the 2 weeks since Brendan Rodgers has left. He's been in the bookies in that line of interested, or not interested, but potential people of
Candidates, yeah.
interest for
Yeah.
candidates for the Celtic job, and that is Columbus Crew boss Wilfried Noncy, the Frenchman, the 48-year-old Frenchman. He
Mm-hmm.
has emerged as a candidate for the Celtic managerial vacancy. It's understood he's among the favourites on the shortlist to replace Brendan Rodgers, which also includes the likes of Bodo Glimt's Kjetil Knutsen and Ipswich Town boss Kieran McKenna. Just to go through the accolades that Wilfried Noncy has picked up so far in his career, he's so far managed both CF Montreal, Club Football Montreal, and Columbus Crew, one from Canada and one from America, of course. Columbus is in Ohio. Canadian Championship he picked up in 2021, and then he followed that up in his second job with an MLS Cup in 2023 and the Leagues Cup in 2024. He was also named the MLS Coach of the Year in 2024. So clearly a highly rated coach in the MLS. Tony, you and I were discussing it last night. We were discussing it with a couple of people last night. What's your immediate thoughts on this link? Because it's now been brought up in two different sources. So you would expect that he is one of the main players in this search for a new manager.
I think your immediate thought is underwhelming if you're a Celtic supporter. When you do a bit of digging, you'll find out that he has been very successful. It's got a very Ange Postecoglou vibe for me, Ryan, this one. And we all know what happened. So I think lots of people will be reluctant to say anything after what happened with Ange Postecoglou. But I've already nailed my colours to the mast, and I think he's jumped to the top of the bet, and some bookmakers have suspended betting and all that, but sometimes that can be a good guide, sometimes it's not. But I want Kjetil Knutsen. I really do. And I think a majority of the Celtics, but I don't speak for the majority of Celtics, but from what I'm reading, they would want him to. Now, Wilfred Donsey, I think we were speaking about it last night. He plays progressive football, doesn't he? I
Yep.
believe. And yeah, ticks those boxes. But the biggest thing for me is that this has come from the Paul Tidgedale, isn't it? This is a recommendation from him.
Yep.
And
I can
Paul
actually
Tidgedale,
I can bring that up as to
go
why
on.
people believe that to be the case, Tony, just quickly. Kwame Ampadu, who
Yeah,
is Nonsi's assistant at Columbus Club or Columbus Crew, he worked with Tisdale at Exeter
yeah,
City, and he is the father of Ethan Ampadu that plays for Leeds United, who previously played for Sheffield United and Chelsea, plays for the Welsh national team. It's understood that if he was to get the job, if Nonsi was to get the job at Celtic, then it would be likely that Ampadu would join him too. Kwame, I mean, not Ethan, because he's currently contracted to Leeds in the Premier League. So that's where that link is coming from Paul Tisdale, who we know from sources is going to have a really hands-on approach in the
yeah,
appointment of the next Celtic manager, alongside other members of the Celtic hierarchy. But he's taken a real hands-on approach to recruitment, or the recruitment of a new manager. So that would make sense. That put two and two together. The fact that
yeah,
he knows Wilfred Nonsi, and that would be his sort of one of his picks for that vacant role at Celtic.
yeah. So this is on the advice of Paul Tidgedale, who's the head of football operations, who up until now has been conspicuous by his absence, Ryan, hasn't he? In terms of being all over things. Now all of a sudden he knows somebody who knows Wilfred Nonsi, and this guy's jumped to the top of the pecking order to be Celtic's next manager. If what you're reading is to believe, always, you know me, I'm a dots and lines man, so I'm just trying to kind of see where we are on this. But if it's to be Wilfred Nonsi, obviously everybody would get behind them. But again, to me, the one that leaps out at you there is Kjetil Knutsen, who is the biggest person of interest for me. He really is, Ryan, and only because of what he did with Bodo Glimt, Europa League semi-finalists. He's turned them into a Champions League team as well, and he has built something tangible there. And I think that ticks any. The stars are aligning here, Ryan. You're going to get one crack at this. This guy's contract's up in December. The season finishes in December. See, if you're a big club and you act right, Ryan, you know what you do? You recruit Knutsen, right? And then you announce it on Cup final day, but you let Martin O'Neill take the team for Cup final day. But because Celtic wouldn't lose that game then, because the feel good factor would be coursing through everybody, and Martin O'Neill could say, right, take his bow at Hampden, hopefully win the trophy. But that's what I do. If you're a big club, if you're going to go and get a manager, go and get him and announce it that day and say he's coming in at the end, at the start of the year. But in the meantime, let him bring his backroom team in, or work on getting his backroom team in, work on potential targets, so that by the summer you hit the ground running. That's how I would operate, Ryan. That's the way you do things. You imagine what the cup final day, if that were the scenario, and if it's to be Nonsi, then so be it. But I just feel that I'm not too convinced about Nonsi. I know he's been successful, and I know he plays progressive football. Don't want to say too much, obviously, because of what happened when Ange came as well. But I just think that of the three that top the list, Kjetil Knutsen, Kieran McKenna, and Wilfred Nonsi, that's my order of preference.
Yeah, it's clear that you've nailed your colours, tied your colours to the mast with
Yeah,
Kjetil Knutsen, and we will get on to speak about him in a couple of minutes. I did actually reach out and speak to a couple of people about Wilfred Nonsi, because he's a guy that's really highly regarded in the
mm-hmm.
MLS, and if you're paying attention to the MLS and everything that's going on in that league at the moment, football, or soccer as they call it over there, we'll call it football here. It's developing as a sport. It helps that they'll get arguably the greatest player of all time, in Lionel Messi, playing his trade for Inter Miami at the moment, alongside a couple of his friends, a couple of his former Barcelona friends, and Sergio Busquets and Luis Suarez. But in terms of managerial excitement, it would seem as if Wilfried Nonsi is one of the most highly regarded figures in American football at this moment in time. I reached out and spoke to Larry Henry Jr., who's been pretty much on the ball with any news regarding Cameron Carter-Vickers over the past couple of years. He spoke about the new contract for Carter-Vickers shortly before it was signed. He's been in and about Celtic news over the past couple of years because there's been such an American influence on the team. So I asked him about Wilfried Nonsi, and this is what he had to say. He says he's a good head coach. I liked how he's made Columbus Crew a threatening team in the MLS again. He's curious at how he would adjust to Europe, and he would adjust in a larger league and club. But he definitely loves giving opportunities to young players. He says that he thinks he deserves a shot overseas. That sounds very much like the way that Ange Postecoglou was getting spoke about shortly before his arrival at Celtic. Columbus has been fairly consistent during his time as head coach. I remember the year that they beat LAFC, Los Angeles FC, for the MLS Cup. I was there, and a lot of folks didn't actually expect them to win. I was actually shocked that an MLS head coach was linked with Celtic, given the history and size of the club. And then I spoke to somebody else who watches MLS football quite closely. He's been watching MLS football for the past couple of years. His team's always been the best to watch, a bit more possession-based than he'd probably get the time to do here, but he's clearly a decent coach with a style that's actually won stuff in the MLS. He's seen a few people saying he'd be the cheap option and an easy one for the board, but surely worth a crack over some of the other names linked, and he's definitely one of those left field sort of appointments. Then just finally going on to some of his tactics and what he plays. Quite similar to Ange ball, in the sense that it's already been coined as Nonsi ball in Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio. His tactics are known. He's known for having aggressive possession-based style centred on a 3-4-3 or a 3-4-2-1 formation, which uses patience to draw opponents in before attacking quickly. His philosophy, called Nonsi ball, emphasises a structured but creative approach with a strong emphasis on ball retention and a focus on quick, aggressive defensive transitions to win the ball back. So he clearly sounds like a progressive modern coach, 48 years old. He was previously the assistant to Thierry Henry before Henry moved, I believe, before he resigned to, I think that he went to Monaco after that, so it then allowed Nonsi to become the head coach at Montreal, and since then he's carved his own path as a fully fledged head coach. Yeah. So after reading all of that, Tony, after reading two experts talk about Nonsi and reading the tactics that he would bring out, is he a potential candidate that would interest you as sort of a left field appointment, or are you still very much on the Knutson boat?
Oh, Knutson for me, whilst that sounds very impressive, Ryan, I'm Knutson for a reason, because he's built something tangible that he's taken in from his domestic league into the Champions League and the Europa League. He got to semi-final, lost to the eventual winners, Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham, ironically enough. I don't know if the winning in the MLS translates to competing in the Champions League. I would want somebody who has experience of European football, i.e. Knutson, to really get a hold of the Celtic team and take it by the scruff of the neck if they can persuade them to leave Bodo. But it's, and as I say, I know Nonsi's been successful in the MLS, but I'm struggling to see how that could equate to success for Celtic at European level. And that's what Celtic require, Ryan. They need a manager who's going to not only come in and win domestically, but they also need a manager to compete at European level, not just get us into competition, and I mean compete, be a force again, if they can really do that. And that's why Knutson, for me, ticks every box going, and you have the ideal opportunity to approach him and throw everything at him and say, this is our ambition. We know you're ambitious. We know you've been asked before, but really sell the club to him and get him to give you an answer, Ryan.
Yeah,
He's a person of interest. Get him to say no, and that's fine. And if he doesn't want it, great. But you cannot let this opportunity pass you by. And I'm reading as well that he's high on the list of prospective candidates. Good. He has to stay there because he's a person of interest till he knocks you back. And as I say, Nonsi, if it is Nonsi, then you're going to have to get behind him. I get all that, but there's too many red flags for me with Nonsi where it's Tisdale's, recommendation. And the head of football operations for me, Ryan, he's not done anything since he came in. This is a critical appointment. And I'm unsure as to why he has such a real kind of hands-on role in this when he hasn't been hands-on since he came in, and we've just gone through a shambolic transfer window when the head of football operations should have been all over that and recommending players or bringing in players. So the manager who resigned 2 weeks ago. So this is all about the board have to get this right. They have to read the room in this one.
yeah.
And sadly, I don't trust them to read the room.
I think it's important to just underline the point that Nonsi is French as well. A lot of people in the comments are looking at MLS and saying, oh, it'll be an American coach coming in or Canadian coach coming in. He is French. He did have a senior football career. He retired when he was 22, I believe. So he's carved out his career. I believe that he moved to Canada in 2006 and he's carved out his own career in Canada, then moved to Columbus, Ohio. And this is the reason why he's been linked with the job. Just on and I believe that there's a lot of apprehension about Tisdale because a lot of people aren't sure of the role that he does in the team. And I would actually bring that back to the point that, or bring it back to the point that the club's communication on that's been really poor. There's been no sit down interview with
Yeah.
Tisdale since he got that job. There's been no minutes released or full minutes released of what he said in the fans forum or what his job description entails or his day to day. So that, having that confusion, the fact that there's no real clarification on what his day to day role is in the running of the club and what he brings specifically to the team, how he helps the manager or whoever's in place at the club and how he reports back to the hierarchy. The fact that hasn't been clarified will in turn, because of Nonsi, people will be turned off because of that. But I don't want to spend too much time because there are three names that have been linked on that on that short list of names, and the second one is the one that you'll probably want to speak about the most, Tony. The one that you've spoke about already, but we'll get at, and understandably so. He's a popular figure, partly due in fact for what he did to Celtic in 2022 in the Europa Conference League, what he did to Ange Postecoglou's team, particularly at home. It was a systematic destruction of a football side that was dominating in Scotland by that point. They were really running over everybody, and then they came up against a team in Bodo Glimt that were quite incredible to watch, particularly away from home at Celtic Park. So Kjetil Knutsen, 58 years old, he's been in that role for a number of years now, since 2018, 2019. I believe that he was the assistant as well before getting the head coach role. He is a four-time Elite Syrian winner, and he's also a three-time Coach of the Year in Norway's top division. He's got a fluid attacking style, 4-3-3, and the fullbacks tuck in as well. So that would go with the way that Ange Postecoglou and Brendan Rodgers used to play their football. He led Bodo Glimt to the semi-final of the Europa League last year. And he's now in the Champions League phase at the moment, but his contract's up in a few weeks, which is quite interesting because Bodo Glimt's games in the Champions League will finish. There'll be 2 extra fixtures that will finish in January, so I'm not too sure about the ins and outs when it comes to, I don't know if they'll give him maybe a short-term extension before him leaving the club to see out what he's built Bodo Glimt from nothing to a Champions League team, essentially. So he beat Celtic home and away in 2022 under Ange Postecoglou. A performance that's still resonates in my head as being one of the most impressive performances from an away side at Celtic Park, what they did to a good Celtic team under Ange Postecoglou. Kjetil Knutsen was linked with the job in 2023 following Ange Postecoglou's departure to Tottenham Hotspur. Those two managers would then meet up again to face each other in the semi-final of the Europa League. Ange Postecoglou got his own back on Knutsen that night and brought them to the Europa League final, where they beat Manchester United, of course. But Kjetil Knutsen, 57 years old, he's made notions of the fact that he wants a new challenge in football. What better challenge than being given the keys to Celtic potentially? Yeah, I'll give the floor is yours, Tony, to speak about Knutsen and what you think he would bring to the side if he was to be appointed.
My thoughts when you were speaking was, ta-da! Isn't that what you want your manager to do? Any manager coming into Celtic Park? To build something? He built something wonderful at Bodo Glimt. Now,
it really is incredible what he's built.
Yeah, correct. If you look at it, it's incredible what he's built. I said it last week, Ryan. I watched Michelin tear Celtic apart. I've watched Bodo Glimt tear Celtic apart. I watched, teams like Club Brugge make their mark. Give the keys to the kingdom to somebody like that who can build a Bodo Glimt, a Michelin, or a Club Brugge at Celtic. This all comes down to the board's ambition. If they're going to turn around and say to this guy, do you know what? As I say, they need to read the room on this. They have to get this appointment right. And for me, he is the standout candidate because of what he's done. Not only has he dominated domestically with Bodo Glimt, he's made them a European team, Ryan. And that, for me, is what Celtic are striving for right now. A boss who has previous in dominating domestically and making a club a respectable European team. And I use the word inverted commas, force, right? And he has Europa League semi-final and now in the Champions League. And he has a lot less resources than Celtic to do that. Now, this all comes down to obviously Knutsen doing his due diligence as well and saying to the Celtic board, what's the parameters here? Who do I work with? What's going on? But I would want Knutsen to bring in his own backroom team. We need a refresh, Ryan, a reset, a recalibration, call it what you like, and everything that happens. The scouting system, recruitment, the backroom team, and a management team. And if Celtic are brave enough, this is what the board have to do. They have to be brave enough to say, do you know what? We're going to go in a different direction. Get this guy, Kjetil Knutsen, because he ticks all the boxes. And as I say, the stars are aligning in terms of timing. This is your one shot at it, Ryan. Your one shot at trying to recruit a manager of Kjetil Knutsen's calibre and quality.
I believe if you wait until the summer to appoint somebody, and the off chance that he's still available in the summer, then it becomes more difficult because there'll be lots of clubs that will be looking to bring in a manager like Kjetil Knutsen and make no two ways about it. He's been causing waves with what he's been doing in the European game and domestically as well for Norway. He's totally split Norwegian football open with his exciting brand of modern progressive football. My question to you, Tony, is would he take the job with so many doubts over the infrastructure of the club, with the likes of Paul Tisdale in the frame at the moment as the head of football operations? Would he take the job after reading Dermot Desmond's hit piece on Brendan Rodgers? Would he want that as potentially part of his CV if things go south at Celtic? I'm guessing I'm playing devil's advocate in that regard, but there are a lot of red flags. There's probably more red flags for Knutsen on Celtic than there is for Celtic on Kjetil Knutsen.
But my point is, if he's on the list of preferred candidates, they're going to have to speak to him. So he's going to have to ask those questions. And again, as I say, approach these people, get them to say why they don't want it. At least get an answer. You have to go out and get Kjetil Knutsen's the outstanding candidate for me at this moment in time. And because of what he's done, both domestically and in European football. And I say, you can say the same about Brendan Rodgers wanted the same, and he has parted company. But at some point, somebody has to come in, or they both have to appoint somebody and say to them, okay, or maybe they don't So that's what I'm saying. I don't trust the board to get it right, Ryan. I've got to be honest. But this guy is ticking every box for Celtic, and they have to keep him. For me, he is the only preferred candidate in my eyes. I've got to be honest, and if we don't get him fine, I'll be disappointed. I'll get behind who they bring in because he's the Celtic manager. But you know, I'd be bitterly disappointed if they don't try everything that they can to get this man to come to Celtic, because I think he's got real potential and can turn, if he can turn Bodo Glimt into a European team of repute, imagine what he could do at Celtic. And I think, as you say, he wants a new challenge. He's speaking with forked tongue at the minute, isn't he? I think he's too scared to tell Bodo that he wants to leave. So he's kind of saying, well, we'll see what happens, all that kind of stuff. But you would, and you don't have to wait to the summer to recruit this guy. As I say, you could recruit him next month, tell everybody he's coming in, do it in cup final day. I mean, that to me would be the ultimate actions of a big club, Ryan. That's how big clubs operate. That's how they conduct their business and do their stuff. But as I say, I have my faith is slightly tested with the fact that Paul Tisdale was so heavily involved in this manager search, and the recommendation has come from a friend of Paul Tisdale, which these things worry me greatly, Ryan, I have to say.
Yeah. On the reverse of that, you could say that if he does have such a big say in the managerial role, then it would be quite, I don't know if heartening is the word, but at least consistent, knowing that his opinion is getting viewed. If that is his job and his opinion is getting viewed so highly, and the fact that there are people that do have links to Tisdale, then it would suggest that there's a connected, unifying approach when it comes to appointing a manager. On Knutson, that's. I think he's the most popular candidate from the Celtic support. When you're canvassing the Celtic support and you're asking numerous people in terms of people that haven't already been in charge of Celtic, so you can kind of discount Ange Postecoglou. Now, I know a lot of people wanted him back in the immediate aftermath of Brendan Rodgers departing the club, but now that Celtic are going in a different direction, it would seem that Kjetil Knutson is the most popular candidate. Just a quick shout out before we go on to speak about the third and final candidate on the shortlist that's been doing the rounds as of late. If you like what we do, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It is completely free, and you'll be notified when we go live with pre and post match videos, morning briefings, special interviews with people, and all the other videos that we'll do across the season. So hit that subscribe button. We've got 584 people watching at the moment. We appreciate each and every one of you. And if you like what we do, please put a link or please put your comment after the video and join the discussion. If you subscribe as well, you get the opportunity to join the live chat, which is really busy this morning, as we would expect, because it's manager o'clock at the moment, Tony, and everybody wants to know about who's going to be replacing both Brendan Rodgers as permanent manager and Martin O'Neill as the person in situ at the moment. So the third name has been the name that's probably had the most talk about him since Brendan Rodgers departed. I think he's been the one consistent name that's been there since 2 weeks ago. I mean, that was 2 weeks ago yesterday that Brendan Rodgers left the club. That has been the longest 14 days ever. I don't know about you, Tony. But Kieran McKenna, he's still at Ipswich Town, 39-year-old coach. Ipswich is his first managerial role. He's previously had spells at Man United as an assistant. I think he was also a coach at Tottenham prior to that. He guided Ipswich, the Tractor Boys, from League One to the English Premier League in 2 full seasons. So he stabilised them in the first season. I think he came in midway. And then in the second season, he was a runner-up in League One, which brought them to the Championship. The season after that, they then finished runners-up in the English Championship, which brought them to the Premier League. Unfortunately, they get relegated the season after, but we've seen how much you need to actually spend to stay in the Premier League if you're a newly promoted side. Just look at Sunderland's bank balance for that, or their receipt as to how much they've spent in order to try and stay in the Premier League. He was linked with Man United before signing an extended deal with Ipswich, which made him one of the highest paid managers reportedly in the Premier League. That was before Man United recruited Ruben Amorim, and he plays a 4-2-3-1, but he's also adaptable in his approach. 39 years old, Northern Irish, young manager, Irish manager, ticks a lot of boxes for Dermot Desmond, and I think it's important that this is underlined as well. You've got to impress Dermot Desmond in the interview process. That's a massive step in order to becoming the Celtic manager, and he plays a massive role, whether people like it or not. You've got to impress Dermot Desmond in an interview capacity, and if you can do that, then you might just get that vacant role. But Kieran McKenna, what's your thoughts on him? Is he one of your preferred candidates, Tony?
I wouldn't rule out Kieran McKenna getting it. And I'm not put off by the 5 million compensation and all that. Celtic have got it, so that
They've
that
got it
wouldn't be a
because he
problem.
didn't spend it a couple of months ago.
Well,
The
correct.
transfer
So,
window.
so it's not a problem, is it? You know what I mean? So anyone who's bigging that up was a big problem. Just look at Celtic's bank balance. If Celtic want him, again, he's another one that they will go and get. Dermot Desmond will play a major part in this. That Irish connection that you speak of, you know, Dermot lays a lot of stock in that, doesn't he?
All you have to do is
So,
look at the managers that Celtic have
correct.
had over the past 20 years.
And
There's quite a few that are Irish.
yeah, and also, you know, it's one of those things where as I say, my order of preference is Knutson, McKenna, Nonsi. If it's going to be one of those off that preferred candidate list, McKenna, is it too soon for him? You know, but lots of people say he did very well with Ipswich, and he has. And you know the Manchester United link. Yep, I get all that, but I've still to be convinced about Kieran McKenna in terms of, is he the right fit for Celtic? I'm willing to be convinced, but I'm still on the fence with that one. Again, another one that if he comes in, you'll get my full support and backing, and so will Wilfred Nancy. I'm not being disparaging at all to any of these guys. It's the fact that I think there's an outstanding candidate out there, and Celtic have to go all out to try and land them. So that's just and I felt the same way about Eddie Howe. I don't want to harp on about Ange because he's in the past, but Celtic got really lucky with Ange in terms
Yeah.
of what happened with Eddie Howe. Ange bailed the Celtic board out one almighty hole when he came in and did what he did, because that bungled attempt to land Eddie Howe was farcical from the Celtic hierarchy and made the club a laughingstock. So lessons have to be learned from that, Ryan. They really do. And this can't be allowed to drag into shambles territory. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I guess that's the one positive is it's been quite quiet so far in the managerial hunt.
Yeah.
I would much rather Celtic do their business quietly rather than have it all out in the open. Different teams have different preferences on the way that they try and recruit managers. Sometimes they make it very clear who they want their manager to be, and it's all out in the open, and that can put pressure on candidates. But McKenna's been one of those names that's been linked with the club for the past 2 weeks. Was just doing a little bit more reading there while you were speaking. He was the head of the academy performance analysis at Tottenham Hotspur, so he has an onus to play young players. He wants to develop young players, which would go with what Celtic want to achieve.
Yeah.
They want to bring in young players that we've seen already this season. A number of young players making that step up. The likes of Colby Donovan, Dane Murray as well, to an extent, even though he's 22. But in terms of his game time, he's probably is more of a youngster, given the fact that he's missed so much game time. There's other examples there. Examples last season, quite a few of them out on loan now. But you want Celtic to have more of an onus on young players and bringing young players through. The good thing is Kjetil Knutsen has done that as well at Bodo Glimt, and Wilfred Nonce has done that at Columbus Crew. So all of these candidates have all brought through youngsters. The other thing about Nonce as well, and sorry to go back to him, I know he was the first name that was mentioned. If Celtic are looking for a character reference, then they don't need to look far, because he managed Alistair Johnson at CF Montreal from 2021 to 2022. There was actually quotes last week, re-emerged quotes last week from Alistair Johnson talking up his style of play, saying it was different, but it was good and it was exciting football to play under. So those are the three names that have been linked with the job in recent days. There's also been other names that have, the odds are maybe a little bit bigger. With the likes of Craig Bellamy, I think he's tied his colours to the mast in terms of the Wales job. He just sees it as too much of an honour managing Wales, and wants to bring them to the World Cup. If he can do that, then he would really be happy with his work there. Perhaps it's come too early for him, even though I like the cut of his jib. Ange Postecoglou, I don't think he'll go back the way Marco Rose has been more linked with the Leeds United job, even though Daniel Farke is still in charge there. There's been quite a bit of pressure on the German, but he's emerged as one of the favourites for the Leeds United job. He's worked under, I know that Leeds have got there's part ownership with Red Bull there, and he's worked with two of the Red Bull sides, so that would make sense putting two and two together. There's been other names that have been linked. Also, the case has been that Martin O'Neill continues in his post for the time being until Celtic find a permanent solution, a permanent replacement for Brendan Rodgers. And this broke last night, late on at night, and it was that the Celtic hierarchy are still pondering whether to extend interim boss Martin O'Neill's time in charge. This comes from Sky Sports. The Scottish champions are considering prolonging his short-term stay, with a busy set of fixtures and cup final on the horizon after the international break. That could allow time for some targets to become more available later in the year, such as Kjetil Knutsen, for example. As Sky Sports News revealed last week, Celtic are pleased with the way that O'Neill has galvanised the squad and lifted the mood at Celtic Park. Discussions between principal shareholder Dermot Desmond and O'Neill are due to take place this week, and then it goes on to talk about Columbus Crew head coach Wilfred Nonce as emerged as a candidate alongside Kieran McKenna and Kjetil Knutsen. Nicky Hyen and Robbie Keane are also on the radar. The good thing is, Tony, O'Neill has steadied the ship in his short stint as interim manager. Michelin aside, but a lot of people maybe expected Michelin to get their way over Celtic given how organised they are. But 3 wins from 4, 3 wins in Scotland, 2 back-to-back 4-0 victories in the Scottish Premiership, and 8 goals swinging the goal difference, as well as a semi-final win over Rangers at Hampden to book their place in the final against St Mirren. He's done a good job, and there could certainly be worse people to give the job on a further interim basis than Martin O'Neill while candidates are drawn up.
It's perfectly simple for me, Ryan. He stays till they appoint a manager. End of discussion. And he's probably willing to stay. I know he keeps saying it's a short-term thing. He knows it's a short-term thing, but until Celtic appoint the next manager to succeed Brendan Rodgers, Martin O'Neill stays in situ, because he has done a very good job. The place has been lifted. You saw for yourself, even on Sunday, where whilst it wasn't vintage Celtic, they still won 4-0 in the end. So he's clearly getting a tune out the players. The only disappointment has been the injuries that the team have picked up since he came in. That Martin O'Neill can't legislate for that. But, that interim management team of O'Neill, Sean Maloney and Matt Fothering, they've reinvigorated those players, and they've earned the right to continue for as long as Celtic deliberate over who's going to be the new manager. And I think that's the deal, and I think Martin understood that as well. And I think because of his love for the club and his loyalty to Dermot Desmond per se, I think that's exactly what will happen. They'll have that chat and they'll say, look, can you continue a bit longer? Fine. And I think everybody, it's not even sentiment that's playing a part in this. Martin O'Neill leading the team out for the cup final. Results are doing it, Ryan.
Yeah, the
let's
results are
be
backing
honest,
it up as well. Yeah,
results are doing it. Michelin was maybe a step too far with the personnel that he had, and I think he'd be man enough to admit that. And they're another team that are on the rise, aren't they? In the ascendancy. So yeah, but uh, I'd be the first to say too sentimental a call. Martin O'Neill can't lead the team into the cup final. I think at this juncture, Martin O'Neill has to lead the team into the cup final, and that's because I think it's good for the players. And as I say, act like a big club. Announce the new manager on cup final day, but give Martin O'Neill his moment, that interim management team their moment, by going to Hampden and possibly lifting another trophy. And I think that for me is the wonderful compromise here, because as you see, you can announce a new manager's coming in at the end of the season, that kind of thing, or at the end
John
of
and I make a
January
point.
or whatever.
Only
Go on.
and somebody in Edward Y. Voz also comes in and makes a similar sort of point. He says, "Let's hope Martin O'Neill has the stamina to last a few more games." Because listening to what Martin O'Neill had to say after the game, it was half joking about going into sitting in a darkened room until Wednesday. He's been quite self-depreciating. He's always been like that. To be fair,
He's
that's
at
his
it.
charm. Yeah. Okay.
He's at it.
I,
I mean, it's an act for the media. Brilliant, and he's brilliant at it. I said before, and this guy's a ferocious competitor. He's here for as long as you want him. I asked him after the semi-final, would you like the chance to lead the team out at Hampden again? And he said, the short answer is, secretly you'd love to. That seemed to me, he's desperate to do it. And why not? Because, as I said, Celtic might not have their building blocks in place by then, managerially. So I love Martin O'Neill. I think every Celtic supporter loves Martin O'Neill. And he's always done that. I also mentioned the point the other week when I was saying that there's a case for him to stay till the end of the season. This was Martin O'Neill from 20 years ago. You just didn't get to see every subtle nuance in the press conferences because they weren't filmed. He's a great guy for the self-deprecation. And because do you know what that does? It takes all the pressure off the players, Ryan. Puts it all on him. He
I had that
absorbs.
exact same thought yesterday, Tony.
He
I've got to
absorbs it.
agree. Yeah,
Any
he's got
criticism,
all the
bring it on
attention on
me.
himself.
Because do you know how I'll answer that criticism? I'll get results. Ryan had very few training sessions before he played Rangers in a major semi-final with a team who, if you compare and contrast the Ibrox game under Brendan Rodgers and the game at Hampden, it was night and day. To have that influence and impact from the get-go, gravitas and respect can only take you so far. You have to have, a wonderful knowledge of football and footballers and teams, and he's shown what he's got. It's I just think he's the consummate pro in this kind of act that he does in front of the media. Whilst it's brilliant, I keep saying, this is Martin O'Neill is multi-layered. It's one of the layers. You can peel that off, but trust me, this guy's got the stamina. He's in it to win it
Yeah.
as long as he's here.
Yeah, I just looked at the top left hand corner, Tony, and I realised that we've been on for 43 minutes. But I think that we've covered every base when it comes to the managerial shortlist as the search ramps up, as the headline quite rightly says. Tony, it's been an absolute pleasure being on with you this morning, chatting about Wilfred Nonce, Kjetil Knutson, and Kieran McKenna. It could be one of those three. It could be somebody completely different that we've not heard of yet. That's the beauty of a managerial hunt. I wish it wasn't happening midway through the season, just due to all the different factors that brings up or that crops up. But it's the cards that Celtic have been dealt. Brendan Rodgers left the club 2 weeks ago. The search for his replacement remains ongoing. Tony, been an absolute pleasure. Thank you to each and every one of you for being in the comment section, today. And for those who aren't even in the comment section but are watching the videos, why not subscribe to us? It's completely free. You can also subscribe to the Celtic Way website if you want to support us just that little bit more. Currently we're offering a deal at £1 for 6 months. All you have to do is go to www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. You'll get all the latest on the managerial hunt, analysis pieces, interview pieces, and everything else that you could want regarding Celtic. Hit that subscribe button, it's completely free on YouTube, and stay informed with all the latest news regarding Celtic's managerial hunt. Tony, thank you very much for joining me this morning.
Pleasure, appreciate it.
Thank you to It's Simply Furniture for sponsoring this video and all the videos we do. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow to discuss the latest regarding Celtic, who they're looking for as their manager, and all of the rest of the news stories cropping up at this time of year. Until then, guys, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Cheers, guys.